October 2012, we decided our civic life project would focus on the Second Amendment to the Constitution, the right of every citizen to bear arms. At first, our intent was to question whether gun laws should be the same everywhere, in large cities and small rural villages like Kent where we live. We had an armed robbery in one of our banks only a year before. It was unthinkable. But then, 2 months later, the tragedy in Newtown changed everything.
Putting it bluntly, it was heartbreaking, heart-wrenching, horrific, and something no one should ever have to encounter or see.
Was any place safe from gun violence? Is it possible that a law written over 220 years ago is now outdated? How would we, the next generation, come to terms with this issue?
I feel like guns are necessary. I love having a gun.
I don't know. It's kind of confusing because you can think about how easy it is for someone to just come up here and do whatever they did because we're such an open canvas and stuff.
I feel like guns aren't really a problem in our society. You have just as much death due to motor vehicles as you do guns.
I have a big fear of guns and stuff, so I think it's kind of wrong just to have them. I'm okay with hunting and all that stuff.
But it soon became clear how diverse and even polarized opinions are at all levels of society.
I ask you, please be strong. We're going to be willing to fight with you to make
The interpretation of the Second Amendment needs to be modified, and that has to start with the United States Supreme Court. Right now, their latest decision, and the Supreme Court Justice Scalia said that you have a right to bear arms, but you can have and should have legal restrictions.
My feeling is that the Second Amendment is an excellent amendment. It should stand as it is on its own merits. I believe that the first 10 amendments are our Bill of Rights toward our Constitution, and it should not be changed. I think there's more education type of programs we can do for people who want to get involved in shooting for recreational, for competition, for hunting, and for personal protection. But I feel that we should keep the Second Amendment as is.
My belief is that the Founding Fathers, who did a fantastic job in creating the Constitution, did not have in mind what the Second Amendment has become. I don't, for example, think that Thomas Jefferson would be particularly excited to see the battle over the Second Amendment going on now, led by the NRA. And so yes, I can't propose a change, but I do think it needs to be either changed, modified in some way, or, big battle, but possibly even done away with.
I don't think, like I said, I really just don't think that an additional restraints on the gun controls or the laws that we already have in place is going to affect the thinking process of someone who is about to commit a crime. I don't think that they're going to take that extra second and be like, well, all these new laws were put in place, so I'm not going to go ahead and shoot up a school.
There are people that feel they should have the right to possess and bear arms, and there are people that feel that guns are bad for everybody. And I would take a stand one way or the other. I would say that that's a topic for our legislators to discuss, to argue about. And if people certainly don't like what our legislators do, then their responsibility is, number one, to provide our legislators with information as to how they feel, what they believe, to pay attention to what the legislators do when they discuss the topic. And then if they don't like what the legislator does, their option then is to vote them out of office and do everything they can to put someone in there that represents their view.
With every passing week, the struggle over the right to bear arms grew. In communities large and small, voices rose. Voices that were once silent now demanded to be heard, to be counted. We were witnessing the birth of a war of opposing views so strong as to almost be violent. A war that, at one time, seemed worlds away from the peace and safety of our little village. No longer could we turn away and not be counted. But what could we do? What were we supposed to do?
Sadly, it's a different world today than it was when I grew up in a small town in Washington, Connecticut in the 50s and 60s. It's a vastly different world, and it's a difficult world to grow up in. I'm concerned for people like yourselves.
What young people need to do is think about their own personal behavior, starting from an early age. Bullying in schools. Think about that. If you think of some of the alleged shooters that we've had, and shooters that have committed suicide, they had histories of maybe being Columbine. They were supposedly victims of school bullying, and they were acting out against classmates that they felt were treating them properly. So you need to think about your behavior and think about how you treat people and start from there. And I think that's very important for young people to think about.
You know, read as much as you can, do projects like this, talk to people, talk to police officers. I'm glad you had Lieutenant Vance up here. Couldn't have a better person representing the state of Connecticut.
What I think young people have to realize is that I don't think anybody really wants to trample on their rights. And I think a lot of young people will look at people that have knee-jerk reactions to tragedies and to incidents that occur. I think that you know, the Constitution is in place. We live in the United States of America. We have inalienable rights where we can bear arms, we can have free speech, and the list goes on and on. It's easy for many people to sit back and complain and moan and disagree, but do nothing about it. Those people aren't participants in our governmental process. And sometimes you wonder if they truly should be listened to. But be involved, be active, and be aware. And I think it just will only enhance the great country that we live in.
So many questions remain unanswered. Was there a right course of action? A wrong? Is this an issue that can be solved without altering the Second Amendment to the Constitution? In the end, we were like swept away. Swept away by the passion and conviction on both sides of the argument. Swept away by the enormity of the challenge. Swept away by the decisions we will have to make one day. One day.